I'm just going to kick it off here.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. So this is Bill Quigley of the.
Talk a little bit louder, even too, for the room.
Okay. This is Bill Quigley of Team Narwhal. I'm just going to start off and hand it over to the fastest guy. But what we're going to do here is just go through some screenshots of the tracker on the race, on the WA360 race. You can see the course right here. We started up there in Port Townsend. We went down to Olympia, went around Bud Inlet Shoal, then went all the way back up to pretty close to Deception Pass, then went to Bellingham, then around Point Roberts, and then back down to Port Townsend. So it's supposed to be about 360 miles. I think a lot of us said a lot more than that. Maybe more on that later. And we're just going to kind of show you some of the highlights during that week. So the first tracker shot here is Monday, 7th of June at 6 a.m. And at that point, we're all in the same place. Now I'm going to flip it over to Jeff's propulsion unit, and he's going to talk a little bit about why his boat was so fast when there was no wind.
Which was all the time.
Okay, here we go. Rotating.
Very not super fast. I started to demonstrate the breeze that's coming out of this thing.
Wrong one.
Okay, so some crew member, Mike Hummels, really is the genius behind this. And, you know, a lot of people have asked us, you know, why we wanted to do a long tail and why we wanted to do a ducted prop. And it always kind of came back to Mike. Well, I mean, actually, we're all at that time, we're 57 too. So we're thinking that we're going to try and go for the absolute maximum efficiency that we can get. So, you know, people talk about ducted props and that they're more efficient. So we're going to do a ducted prop. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to minimize the friction in the system. So we didn't want to change directions with any gearing, and we didn't want to do any, you know, a bunch of complicated, you know, draggy kind of mechanical mechanisms. And so, and of course, we also had to keep it simple. And so a tandem bike was proven. You know, we knew a tandem bike, you know, all the structure in a tandem bike was going to work. So we stuck the tandem bike between the main hull and the AMA, and then tried to minimize any changes in direction from the rear outpush shaft to that. And so we used a flex drive, which we'll, you know, later on we'll talk about it, but it kind of worked and kind of didn't. It's actually a rotor-rooter flexible shaft, and you know, part of the, it's really a very, and other teams will tell you, it's a very complicated engineering puzzle. And to do it on a budget and get it so it actually works is a little bit of a challenge. But overall, it worked great. It was very efficient. The interesting thing was when we got into chop and the boat was pitching up and down, the duck never came out of the water. There was never any efficiency loss because the propeller was being swept vertical and, you know, up and down. The thing tracked great, never moved, never changed the distance between it and the surface of the water. So it worked great until it broke.
How far below the surface was it?
It tracked by itself about a foot below the surface. Anywhere from 6 inches to a foot, yeah.
It just dynamically did that?
Dynamically did that, which is a problem. It also made it really hard to bring up. So the faster you go, the less it wanted to come out of the water. So you really had to get it up. We did have a man overboard incident. Someone was pulling it up out of the water
And pulled them in.
and pulled them in. So yeah.
Boat 1, crew 0.
Yeah, crew 0. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, here we go. Rotating.
so this is Bill. There's Captain Dan Hill with our pedal drive. So we call this the Smith drive because it was built by Joel Smith, who's down in Mexico now, for the race to Alaska. And we had 2 of them. We loaned them to another crew who shall remain nameless. And they heavily modified them. So we got them back, and Dan put them back together, got them working again. And this is, you can see Dan doing some significant modifications to the drive the day before the race. In fact, didn't
Hours.
Vince go out? Yeah, Vince, he went to
Hours
a,
before the race.
hours. Vince went to a bike shop and bought that chain ring to change the gear ratio. And ours worked really well. We had a little bit of a human ergonomics problem. If Dan and I are about 6 feet tall, and when we were pedaling, our knees were up against our chests. So, and we just didn't have time to work that out. So really the only member of our crew who could effectively pedal for any length of time was Dave, our third crew, who's about 5'5". So,
And also a cyclist.
yeah, and an avid cyclist.
So he could pedal for hours. But if you look on the actual shaft that comes down, it says no photos, please. And there was so many people taking photos of the no photos, please sign that was handwritten with a Sharpie on there, which is hilarious.
So just before we move on, I don't think we have any photos of ours. We might get some glimpses later, but for our boat, we originally were thinking, hey, we got 2 of the 3 folks on the team are really good rowers. We put rowing stations on, so Vis Viva, 24-foot catamaran. So we put rowing stations on front of each of those. And then almost at the last minute, we bought a kayak pedal drive. So of course, designed for a 50-pound kayak instead of a 2,000 some pound catamaran. But it actually worked pretty well until it did. The nice thing about it was it had a flexible shaft, which made it easier to figure out configuration and mount it on our deck. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Did your flex shaft break?
It did break.
It did break. Okay, good. We're in good
Andrew,
company.
could you describe what your boat is? I don't think you said it yet.
Oh yeah, so Vis Viva, we have a Seawind 24. So this was the current Seawind 1600s, 1260s. The very first catamaran they built was a 24-foot, and it's a fun little boat. I have 2 hulls, a little bit more than coffins, but not too much. And then just trampolines in the middle. So it's a fun boat, but it's early 1980s design and pre-CAD and computer-aided design. So it's admittedly a little primitive. They were kind of guessing at what's the right shape for dagger boards and things of that nature. It's a fun boat, maybe not the most optimized.
So Andrew, the reason I asked that is because Tom Lemire's in Ohio is on Zoom, and he was wondering how about your boat because he has one like that.
Oh,
as
okay.
well. So
Lots of fun.
yeah,
Very wet, which I'm sure he knows.
yeah, and I think you mentioned a Facebook group, which I don't know if you're on, but
Yep.
Yeah, he'd probably like to maybe hook up with you sometime, but he's on Zoom or he was. Anyway, go ahead.
Is that the Seawind? That's the Australian?
Yes. They built some in Australia and I think some in Florida.
The current Seawinds?
Okay, have fun.
Same one.
Yeah, I'll jump in again. This is Tom. Yeah, there's a group, Seawind 24 on Facebook, and there's some pretty bold sailors there.
Great.
Oh, and also while we're on the topic, Narwal had 2 sliding seat rowing stations that were built by Mark Dix for the Race to Alaska. They worked great up until the point where we ripped one of our carbon fiber shafts apart during a jibe. Incidentally, the spinnaker sheet.
The purpose drive. It was done on purpose.
Yeah, the spinnaker sheet that ripped the carbon fiber oar off was one that I got from Martin at an NWA auction.
So he's the problem. He's the
Right, yeah. So let's blame Martin.
But I mean, if you're going to talk about the rowing stations versus pedal drives, what we saw out of just one person on the pedal drive is we could get about 2.5 knots, and 2 people both on rowing stations going like hell, you could get about 1.5 knots. So the pedal drive was way, way, way more efficient than the rowing stations.
Although I would like to add that we were so confident in our pedal drive that we didn't put rowing stations on, and that cost us 3 times in the race, substantial hours and miles.
Why?
You had a crew though.
Yeah, well. Yeah,
Why did it
but-
cost?
The man.
We'll get to that. I mean, we only had the pedal drive, so when the pedal drive broke, we were stuck.
Oh,
If we would have had, say, pedal drives and some oars or some other type of, then we could have supplemented or, So, and our pedal drive was not without an Achilles heel either, because it worked great as long as the boat was moving. If we ever got in a condition where the boat was pushed back against it, it would just either sink or swing to the side, right? So during the race, we never ran into that situation, although we rigged some whisker lines to kind of prevent that, but that's not really worked out yet.
Could you have used some sort of jury rig your top and lift to pull the pedal drive
That's
out?
what we did. Yeah, we hooked a line from the boom, to that. We used that to pull
Get a
it out.
little bit of leverage.
Yeah, it would still slew to the side, I suppose, but at least it wouldn't drop.
And Narwhal, I don't think Bill mentioned, everybody here knows, but it's a Farrier F32 Trimaran.
Yeah, more or less.
On the rowing stations, I will agree with Bill. Not nearly as efficient as the pedal drives. But generally more robust until you break an oar.
So you're agreeing with Dan. I disagree
Oh, okay.
with it, because I do think that the pedal drives or the rowing stations are quite efficient. If it's particularly on a boat as big as ours, but you know what? We'll test that. We got 2 rowing stations, pedal drive. We'll see what happens. Anyway, we're on slide 3, and
I think a big factor with the pedal drive, with the rowing stations, is a trimaran has amas that are really low to the water, so you can make a pretty efficient rowing station because they're low. But if you have a catamaran with a lot of freeboard, that's going to make it much more difficult to get an efficient rowing position.
Yeah.
And one of the things Mark did was he put the riggers on hinges with adjustable bolts so that you could actually adjust the height of the oar lock based on conditions, which we still do, Mark. And I put a lot of grease on them too. Okay, so this is us near the start. This is Narwhal near the start. I'll just flip through slides until somebody has something interesting to say. That's a pretty cool picture.
This is under the bridge. And so the first day, this race is really, when you think about it, it's really broken up into mini races with a door at either end, at the end. And so you either, you race to that door, and the door is either open or it's closed. And so the first decision the first day was, do we go out into, the main body of water, which is Admiralty Inlet, or do we go through the Port Townsend Canal? We chose to go through the Port Townsend Canal, and it was a little bit of a risk because we knew we were going to get there early, and we knew that there would be current against us. This is underneath the bridge, and we must have been in that position, it felt like, for 20 minutes, but it might have been 5, I don't know. It was really hard to get underneath that bridge. It's a lot of, we were probably, if we really pushed it, we could maybe make 2.5, 3 knots maybe. But you couldn't keep that up for any amount of time, and that's just about what it was running.
Is that a video or a photograph?
That's a photograph. It might as well be a video.
Good one, Diane.
That took me a minute.
Sat there for an hour.
Yeah. And we went around the north side, and we got stuck in the same ebb. And I think probably the highlight of my racing career was when we were sailing just slightly above and slightly faster than Sail Like a Girl. And we were headed into the beach at the north end of Marrowstone.
Really close to the beach.
I was thinking, well, if we hit the beach, I just pop the dagger board, and if you hit the beach, you're stuck because it's a strong ebb. And they tacked away.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I knew, they were 100 miles ahead of us.
Well,
Didn't last long.
And those were the doors too, right? So when Bill went around the point and tried to get into the the main channel, the current was against him there, and then our door was underneath the bridge there, that increased the speed of the water. So
We went inside as well, and it was definitely brutal and right into the wind right as we were going. We just had rowing and pedaling at the same time. It's painful though.
Did you have to really fight to get underneath?
Yeah,
So without any current, how fast would you go if you were both rowing and pedaling?
we could sustain 2 knots, 3 if we were really pushing with all 3 folks.
Okay.
And that's a completely calm sea. One thing, keep in mind with our boat, it's light, it's short, and so any waves just would destroy any momentum we had.
How about you? How fast can you go if there's no wind?
Bill keeps asking me this question. I don't really want to answer it. No, I think we could hit 3 for short periods of time,
Okay.
and I think 2, really 2.5. I do think that we had the fastest setup out there. When we were the only boats that we could not pass because we were never close enough to pass them were Jonah and Trickster, and of course that's not counting the pedal guys and the kayaks who were long gone.
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely no wind. It was all pedal, and you're pushing these boats that are really not meant to be pedaled.
No.
And in this picture, actually, so this is only 4 hours into the race here. So the guy who knows how to pedal, has pedaled all his life, is in front. He's just like trucking along. Jonah in the back, never pedaled a day in his life. Is like dying already.
He's looking a little tired there.
The good news is he's 20, so he recovers fast. But even the difference between doing this race and no wind and biking is that Lance Armstrong never sat that long in the saddle and pedaled that hard. I swear, because I had 24 hours nonstop pedaling a boat, maybe get a break, and maybe the wind comes up later. But 4 days of pushing these boats, it was brutal.
We chose not to do that.
Yeah, you did, but
So
we were in
going-
pain. And so here's like we're almost like down by Seattle, and it was like this pretty much the whole time. We had a little bit of wind at point no point, and it was just blast off pretty much. And
So we were way behind you guys. By the time we got through the bridge, we actually lucked out on the wind. It was with us, and we had later this day, we had just a glorious trip all the way down past Seattle, all the way down to almost Des Moines. But we'll get there in a second.
it is everybody who did this race. I swear they sailed a completely different race in different wind conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, going on the outside, we thought we would be able to catch an eddy on the inside of the shore, and we're in 6 inches of water, still going backwards in reverse, like with a little bit of wind, which wasn't good. So we ended up having to go all the way over towards Woodby in order to actually get out of the flow, and eventually started to make our way south.
And then when you guys were doing this, we actually had to switch from, we were doing Screecher upwind, and we had to switch to the jib because the wind picked up enough that Screecher wouldn't go upwind.
So that's more pedaling, pedaling.
My sombrero.
Yeah.
That's good.
This picture, okay, so the guy you just saw, who's the peddler in our team, he saw this after the race, and he's going, we went by Seattle? And because he was on the bike the whole time, and he's facing Brainbridge Island. I know.
That's so great.
Okay, so this is 9 p.m. Monday, first day of the race, and I put this in here because this is the down here, Bend Racing. These are the guys in the double kayak. Those guys were insane. I'm going to show you later where they stopped for the first time, but they are south of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge by 9 o'clock.
Day one.
Yeah, day one, and then this is probably about where we stopped at Blake Island because the wind completely died, and we were tired, and we had smoked salmon to eat. And then I put High Seas Drifters in here. I don't know why I put them in there, but they did pretty well, right? They were who? No, they didn't. Were they the first?
We were battling with them the whole way.
Yeah.
That's why.
And then here's Jeff.
Stopped on your buoy there.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no.
Yeah, we. Yeah. No, we did.
Yeah,
we
you did.
uh,
You guys stopped.
we
That's
took a
about where his
mooring.
buoy is there on
Yeah,
Vashon.
Yeah, it
that's
is.
what I was thinking. We on Narwhal, we took a mooring at Blake Island the first night, and then we anchored for a few hours the next 3 nights, and we never once took the mainsail down. So
It
that's
was
how
the-
much wind there was.
It was the only time I've ever anchored or moored with a mainsail up.
We anchored 3 times and moored once and never took the mainsail down.
It was always up full sail the whole way. We
And
reefed
the
twice, but,
idea
yeah,
was if there was a hint of breeze, we would just, grab the anchor and go.
line.
Well,
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna cut the line.
Well, I mean, you know
He
what
would
I'm
have cut the line.
This point was the first mistake, strategy mistake that we actually made. And it was based on that fact that we were so tired already. And when we got to Blake, we could see Roderna at the tip of Vashon Island. And but we were so tired. I mean, the straight shot would have been to just keep pedaling and meet them on the tip of Vashon Island. But there's a little bit of wind that went into, what's that bay there on the north side of Blake Island that goes left, as if you're going to Bremerton. Like, yeah, essentially around the west side of Blake Island. It looked like there's a teeny bit of wind in there, and we were so tired, we just like got off the bikes, put up the spinnaker, and we actually did get a little bit of a break while we sailed around the backside of Blake Island. But the current was so bad there that we totally lost Roderna at that point.
And remember, the current's always ebbing through here. So these guys were going through in the nav. Oh, this is us on the mooring. Oh, so wait, go back to, yeah.
So you'll notice
Oh,
Vis
right, because we saw.
Viva, we're way on the way behind, mostly because we can't point nearly as nicely as these nice F boats. And we were actually down one crew. So we started off with 3, and at this point we had already injured 1. So we'll get to that a little bit later. No,
Yeah, you don't have
we
to
actually,
finish.
you'll see in a second, we stopped that evening at Des Moines. And then let her off for the rest of the race. So then we were down to 2. But well, about now, we did catch a lucky break. We finally were not bashing upwind. And we just got a nice calm breeze. So starting from about here, I think we have a photo coming up, actually maybe in the next slide. You'll see a much darker view of Seattle as we pass it.
There's one comment, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard from a source I forget, but those guys in the double kayak that just kept going night and day, they wore diapers so that they didn't have to worry about it.
That sounds like an old wives' tale. No way.
We wore diapers.
We all did. We
Yeah,
just
we
not
were-
telling you about it.
I
All
wore
of us were wearing
just-
diapers.
Yeah.
No, I heard they took it one further. They wore catheters is what they had.
Catheters, diapers, the whole deal.
That's how you stay warm. So this is the.
So
There it is.
this is us passing Seattle. There were no diapers on our boat.
But like where Via was in the past, the last picture, basically we rode and pedaled all the way to Blake Island. We had 0 wind, like it was 0-0 and like almost no tide. So like we just pedaled. And then we were on the outside of Blake Island. A couple people ran out from a campsite and threw us some ice cream bars.
Nice.
I want to throw that in because it wasn't solicited.
Yeah, it wasn't solicited.
It wasn't solicited, but we did get 3 ice cream bars, which were well welcomed at that point.
And was that before or after you guys threw us the beer?
That was after we attempted to leave you a beer in your track. And apparently beers in bottles actually stink. Beers in cans actually float. So I learned something.
Now we know.
That was
Yeah.
such a
Yeah, but we
bummer.
learned the hard way.
It was a good beer too.
Hey, any Paps would have been.
I know, right?
So,
And Mark Dix, I want you to take note of those lightning holes in that rowing station.
oh, yes.
When you get back from Mexico, get on that.
So,
I got a whole saw for you.
we had a nice cruise. This is actually us as well. You can tell definitely as it's getting darker. Narwhal's chilling at their mooring buoy, but we did have a beautiful sail, Screecher and Maine, just all the way from probably Shoal down almost to Des Moines.
So you sailed past us where we were on a mooring with our sail.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, our boat does really well if it's semi-reachy and just ghosting along at a couple of knots. I think that's probably the
I would have taken that.
one.
We did a couple knots with 0.
Yeah. But so we made
We were
it.
in the lee of the island.
So this is the ferry south of Elkai. I'm forgetting which ferry that is. Going over to Vashon, and then shortly thereafter, we were about a mile out from Des Moines, and we lost all wind. And so it was just actually probably a little more than a mile, 1 to 2 miles. And then it was just an hour plus of nothing but rowing and pedaling against the slight current, I think, at that time. It was pretty painful because this was probably like 2 a.m. We finally made it in.
Yeah, we were sleeping.
Yeah. we,
Back on.
we did
We-
not
we
do
didn't
much
sleep.
sleeping, but we got a lift for our one crew member, and then about 5 a.m. we picked back up. But
And then later that day, that's when we saw you.
yeah,
So because we also decided to go around the outside of Vashon on the east side to try. So here it is. Here we are, 1 a.m. So yeah, Ruf Duck is through. So 1 a.m. you guys were through the Tacoma Narrows, and the crazy guys in the kayak with the diapers are actually rounding Bud's
Yeah,
Inlet.
that's right. That's right.
Power.
Hyperpower. And the Narrows, that's another gate, or another door, because, if you got there too late and there was no wind, there's no way you would get through that.
That's a big current flow through there.
It's, huge. Yeah.
2 a.m.
Looks like
I
we're
don't know what we're doing
we
here.
finally made it to
we're,
Des Moines.
we're still, oh, right, that's, you guys got to Des Moines at 2 a.m. Yeah,
Still sleeping.
we're still asleep. Jeff's still sailing.
We're still sleeping.
So-
You guys are
well, no, see, our icon moved. So this
No,
is
I
5 a.m. We had just started going, and Jeff, looks like you only went about 10 or 15 miles
Well,
all night.
It's because we got stuck there. That was the first. That was the first time our pedal drive broke. So we were just coming around. There's a little island there called Eagle Island, and fortunately, we were only in about 3 feet of water. We were hugging the shore, and the drive snapped. And Jonah ran up, dropped the anchor, and so we spent the next, I don't know, hour and a half maybe or so, sitting there trying to figure out how to fix the drive, which we were able to fix it. It broke right at the fitting that comes out of the duct housing at the bottom.
Wow.
You want to talk about the right hand versus left hand screw? issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, we're still trying to figure out what the flaw was, because, and frankly, I think at this point, the flaw was the fact that we had a little too steep a bend right off that first connection point. And so there was probably just too much stress right there at that collet where that cable, because it broke right at the collet, almost as if someone had taken a hacksaw and cut it right through. So that was the working theory. We'll get into the theory developed as we went.
I had a really lazy crew, present company.
But you had enough air to fill that sail, so that's something.
Yep, that's the next morning.
It did seem like we stopped for a long time, but I think all of us got about 20 minutes of sleep.
Yeah.
Night.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Like we're on 0 sleep for the whole trip.
And that's Vince's spinnaker and Martin's sheets. So it's kind of cobbled together.
And Mark,
Okay, here we are.
Hey, Bill. How's it going? Yeah? What are we doing? We're at 3.1 knots right now. And no wind. Dan, how are we doing right now?
Looking forward to get some trophies. That's all.
I know. Well, I'm looking at this wake. We're making this huge wake. It's a rooster tail forming.
So much pain.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm doing nothing but talk about trophies.
So that's me rowing, one rowing station, not pulling too hard, and one guy pedaling, and we could debate until we actually get
3
out there
knots.
again. But that was 3 knots at moderate effort.
Is that over ground or water? I was just speed talk. That was over ground, right? So
Yeah,
That
but I don't
was-
think there was any current down in there. Yeah, because outside, I don't know, you would know better than me. On the east side of Vashon, sometimes current's like a knot.
maybe.
But I don't. It's probably 5.
We had current against us the whole time, so I don't know. That 3 knot is probably like way higher.
Well, that's because you were dragging the speed orb.
I think that was GPS.
So,
Yeah, it was definitely GPS. I just
Yeah.
don't think there was any current.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
so this was about the time we got our remaining crew back to the boat. We see, hey, there's just a little bit of wind, enough to fill a sail, and hey, narwhal's catching up. So we hastily ripped the rowing stations off because for our boat, we would go in circles. We just had one rower, and I have an old knee injury. I can't row for anything. So we decided, okay, we're just gonna use pedal drive only for the rest of the trip. And so we took off the rowing stations, saved the space, saved the mass. That would be a little fateful. We'll get to that in a second. But
So
we did catch up to you guys.
and I think I snapshotted this one, so it's almost 10 a.m. So, oh, this is the first time Ben Reese, they actually stopped there at Blake Island for a while on the tracker. And then Jeff, you're almost at Bud Inlet, right?
Yeah, we're not around the corner
That's a
yet.
long night.
That's a long way.
It's a bit in there.
Yeah, and from the north end of Vashon, that's all pedaling. I mean, we didn't have.
And we couldn't pedal against the current. So like anybody that did overnight, we were just like, that's how they did it. Everyone pedaled all night.
We made it just in time. When
We just
went
couldn't
through.
do it.
Yeah.
Got a good sleep though, at least 3 hours.
This is how close we got. This is
Yeah,
a cell phone
oh,
picture
yeah.
of Narwhal.
That's kind of awesome. That's a sale. I don't know if Mark Dix is still on, but that's a sale we needed. Oh yeah, in the race to Alaska, we also had Martin. Martin, I think half my boat's your boat from your old boat. In the race to Alaska, we had Martin Adams' Screecher, which we destroyed, and we actually had David Miller's Furler, which we did not destroy. But this is a new Ballard Sales Screecher and a Coligo Furler that I love. And we actually used it upwind a lot.
Yeah, we killed Vince's Spinnaker too.
Oh, well, we got it. We got it. So they sewed it. Ballard Sales sewed it up. You'll see that later.
I think this is, oh, you can see our pedal drive. One thing worth noting here, last minute edition, literally, right, I think 30 minutes before we took off, so we boat up to Port Towson, stopped in at REI and got a pair of actual cycling shoes with clips. Highly recommended.
I was impressed.
That definitely was probably like a 30% improvement on pedal drive for us right there.
We have to have the right pedals too.
Yeah, we had clips too.
I about an hour before I took off for REI, I had stolen them off my bike. So
Now, did you practice capsize drill if you're clipped into your pedals?
no, we pretty much there was no risk of capsizing any time that we were pedaling.
Yeah, in this entire race almost.
Good point.
Except for that one stall.
Yeah, there are a couple.
Well,
A couple notable exceptions.
All right, so here's Tuesday. Jeff's rounding Bud Inlet.
Pedaling.
We're still, look, we're there. That's probably where you took that picture.
yeah.
Vis Viva and Narwhal are still.
I will point out Vis Viva is ever so slightly ahead
Yeah.
in the race.
We'll give you that. We'll give you that.
This is actually all the excitement it happened in between these two pictures because this is just the south end of Vashon Island going north. Totally no wind again, a little bit of breeze, not much. But there was a huge squall that came through that actually got us through against the current all the way underneath the bridge. And that's when we saw Bill first, and he was just screaming around the McNeil Island. And then when we got closer to the bridge, we saw Vis Viva just smashing their way upwind. You guys had like a storm sail on and a double reef.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was pretty rough. We actually originally had our jib up and the full main, and we should have been paying more attention to. We said, hey, those clouds look pretty gnarly, but we were trusting too much in the weather forecasts and what the maximum wind gusts were going to be. And we were a little surprised when it hit us, but we actually for a while were completely out of control. I couldn't keep the helm pointed anywhere, but we have a storm reef. We got that in. And we got up, we have a tiny jib. It's not a storm jib, it's probably stolen off the J24 or something. But we got that up and finally got things under control. But couldn't get it pointed in the direction we wanted to go.
You guys looked impressive coming upwind though. You really did.
You were hauling
It
ass.
was like the waves were like deep and short. Yeah.
A lot of banging.
A lot of
Oh,
banging
yeah.
around. And Andrew is exactly right about that storm that came through too, because I wasn't paying any attention really either. And I just come on deck and one of our crew, Brown, Mike Brown, he's our kind of, I don't know, observant guy, I guess. He's just like, hey, you think you better be worried about that? And I turn around, it's just like this big black, just solid black.
Yeah.
Kind of coming that way. And so we actually made the transition in time. I don't know about you guys. You probably
We had the
saw it
screecher
coming.
up.
Did you have a screecher?
So, and I was sleeping
Bet your
down
ass we
below.
did.
Yeah,
And
when
Bill
they had
was
the screecher,
sleeping.
and I was sleeping, and I kind of woke up because I heard them talking about like
This looks
that
bad.
looks bad, and then I heard we should probably get that screecher on. But I do find it, like it's important, same as Race to Alaska. As the guy whose boat it is, it's important to have absolute confidence. Like I didn't go. I was like, okay, they're talking about something, and then I kind of dozed off again. Then I heard him talking about, and then I heard the screecher, and I was like, okay. And then I don't know what it was, but at some point I was like, all right, nap's over. And I went up and I was like, holy shit, there's this giant black. We have a couple pictures of it too. This giant black cloud coming in. Maybe. Oh wait. Well, yeah. Okay. So there. Well, that's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was after this, but let's see. Nothing really exciting there.
None of those. That
Well,
was
that's-
only close.
yeah.
One. Yeah.
No. Nobody had a camera.
And it really was a deal because I think Team Ciarleglio, they were broaching out.
Oh,
Totally. In
shit.
fact,
Oh, yeah.
That's
we
the
saw
funny
that.
part.
Was it you or Dave?
Broach like a girl.
Yeah. Because we saw they were coming back. You guys. So at this
They
point, in the
came at
race-
us. They were so out of control.
Yeah.
They were so broached. And I was like, whoa, broach like a girl's right there. And they're coming right at us.
But remember, at this point, they've already passed Bud Inlet, so
Yeah,
they're
way in
coming
front
back.
of us.
They're sailing downwind, and we're still sailing upwind because you guys are like a day ahead of us at this point. And that's when, yeah. So we got all these boats coming down on us, and
It was a
just
messy.
spun out.
What that was crazy. It was so messy in this tiny little bay outside of Long Branch because boats that caught the first tide going in were now coming out from Bud Inlet, and the other boats that caught the second tide. So it was a busy bay of 40 knots sustained with 60 knot gusts. Like it was nutty for a minute, just for a minute.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was like a burst.
Like it just went through in a minute, and it was just like, I look at them, I'm like, are we okay? And he's like, let's get in the lee. And he's like, let's try to get over here. And we were down
Yeah,
to,
kept
I
going.
think, basically a double reef main.
Right, we took
That
the
was
jib,
it.
jib down, double reef main,
And
and
that
then the
was
Coast
it.
Guard's broadcasting all these pan.
Oh,
pans,
yeah,
like
there's
kayakers in the water and all this.
Yeah,
other thing.
there's
I'm
a
like,
million man overboards and like, the
Race
VHF.
participants?
This,
Yeah.
No, well, I don't think it was, because that's what we were concerned about. Plus, I didn't want to turn around.
There was nothing we could have done, really.
But
Like,
it turns out that like it
We were
wasn't whatever
100%
it
out of
was.
control.
Again, I disagree.
It was so
We were still
spooky.
sailing.
Oh, sorry.
We were.
It was so spooky for us. We were listening to the pans, and my thought was, oh, great, someone's calling it small catamaran out of control.
yeah. You thought they were talking about you,
So
right?
thankfully not the case.
Yeah. I think at that point we had reefed the main and we still had our jib up, and the perspective thing is really apparent at that point because two of the crew was quiet because they're thinking, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing. I'm thinking, yeah, it's a good idea that we reefed and the jib's up, and Jonah's going, let's put the spinnaker up. It's like, no.
Attaboy.
You got
Yeah.
Well, this is us kind of at the beginning of the storm, like still taking pictures, and we still have the jib up, and then this is after, I think.
That's gotta be after, yeah.
Yeah, because we weren't taking pictures while. Well, that was at the time when you're thinking about putting your sails back up and you're just looking around trying to see if it's gone. Next one.
Happy not to be pedaling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
they-
that is absolutely true. At least, we were not pedaling. Yeah.
But the
We were
crazy thing
gonna
about
maybe die, but at least not.
Let me put it this way, none of us were sitting down because that hurt too much.
but I think
And we were sailing, standing up, we were all very happy.
Sounds like another
the-
bus for diapers.
yeah, there wasn't much fetch coming down through there, but still we were in like maybe 10-foot seas with maybe 20 feet between the waves. So it was just like up and down, up and down. And that's
there-
what made it like crazy.
Well, it's because the current, the
It
current was really running.
It
at
was
that point, yeah.
crazy. I'm like, I don't know if this boat can handle this. But it did.
Handled just fine.
Yeah.
So this is afterwards. There's beautiful sunset still heading towards Olympia. Oh, that's the marker back there is Bud Inlet Shoal or whatever the marker we were supposed to run. Okay, so now Jeff's all the way up past Seattle. The crazy paddle guys are all the way up by Langley. We're still, so we had right.
You're
So
under
we,
with that.
we turned, we came back. We actually had a really fun sail in here, downwind. And then, yeah, this is about 1:30. So this is where, right, I went to rest and you and Dave were sailing for like 2 hours without getting anywhere.
We maintained position for 2 hours, barely.
So
Yeah,
did you
they-
consider using an anchor?
Then they did,
We did. Yeah, we did.
again, with the sails up.
They had a great sail from Bud Inlet back to Eagle Island, is that what it is? And that's the only time I had slept so far in the entire trip. So I slept for like the hour and a half from Bud Inlet back to there. And then Bill's like, well, I'm going to rack up. And I'm just like, dude, we're just going backwards. He's like, no, we're not. It's pitch black, so you can't really see anything.
Denial.
It was like, no, we're going backwards. Like, we're making no way. Like, no, we're doing 2 knots. So I'm like, we're doing 2 knots reverse. So we ended up like rowing over.
Yeah, we rode behind that island.
And pitched an anchor, and it was some pretty interesting boats that ended up anchored with us until the tide switched to get through the narrows in the morning, because we were just fighting the tide at that point.
And so much of this, aside from no wind, was working with or against the tides. So I know we had tied up for maybe an hour by Eagle on the way out. And just because the tide was completely against us, we would have been going backwards. And then we must have started back up again. I think we were pedaling most of it. And just in the dark, this is what, 1:40 a.m.?
Yeah.
Head towards Olympia.
But we rounded Bud Inlet at 10 p.m. and and then the southerly picked up and it was super fun. And so you got to furl the screecher most of the way every time you jibe, right? And so you were sleeping, Dave and I were on deck, and I, of course, being a nerd, was sort of experimenting with my apparent wind angle, and pointing high, we were going super fast downwind. We were doing like 14, 16 knots. But I was like, well, I could jibe less and go a little slower, or I could point higher and jibe more. And I was like, well, we're racing. Sorry, Dave, we're racing. So, and he was up for it. He did. He must have done like 30 jibes, yeah, before the wind died.
I have
This
to
is-
say our crew member Dave was just like, he was up for whatever you threw at him. Like the worst food, the worst conditions, the worst paddling.
The only
Like,
really bad food was that freeze-dried stuff. He smoked a bunch of salmon, and what else did you smoke? He brought all this food that was
I
so
roasted
good.
coffee.
He roasted coffee. He also sprayed it all over the cabin.
I did, yeah.
And but what was it you smoked? You smoked salmon and
I
fruit,
tried-
right? Dried fruit.
No, we had beef jerky.
Oh yeah, he made jerky. It was so good. And you vacuumed.
Did you guys have that food?
No, we were doing tortillas and power bars.
he vacuum packed the jerky and salmon and stuff in these little little bags. And so every once in a while he would come out, just like toss out, and we were just like,
But the problem was we didn't expect to burn that many calories rowing and pedaling, that we burned through that in like day 3. It was all gone. And then we ended up with this shit food all
Yeah,
the time.
the freeze dry food was pretty bad. Don't
It
buy it
was
from
so
Draper,
bad.
Utah.
So bad.
Okay, so this is 5 a.m. and you're rounding Bud.
Yeah,
God,
we're
man,
finally
look how far
making
Ruf Duck
it,
is at this point.
Oh, yeah.
We had wind actually all the way from Vashon Island all the way up to south end of Whidbey, and then got dropped off there. We almost got swept up to Port Townsend because it was night, and but we recovered and we made it around the corner without getting swept. But I'd say from there halfway up, maybe absolutely no wind. Definitely past was that Langley.
Oh, so this is you rounding.
Oh, yeah, this is us with the Olympia Shoals marker. So we had a little bit of upwind. And once again, this is one of those where we would have killed to point like some of the trimarans here. But we made it. It was a lot of fun, and it was actually a great morning.
8 a.m. Don't know why I put that in. This is us on Narwal, sailing, trying to get back out. I guess we're going past. Where are we? Oh, we're passing Seattle there. And then Jeff, you're.
That's where we broke the pedal drive the second time. Actually, is where that is. Just off Camino. I think that's what that looks like.
Yeah.
So we did have a little bit of breeze working up from just, well, what is that, Green Bank, whatever. Had a little bit of wind up until this point. We were pedaling again. And every time we got next to Mustang Survival, we just had to put a little extra oomph in just to catch up and pass them. And so we were probably putting a little too much muscle into it, and against the current again. And fortunately, we were only in 3 feet of water again, snapped it, it stopped, Jonah ran up through the anchoring. So we spent half the time fixing it now because it broke at the same spot. We had it figured out, how to fix it by that time. And so again, I think the failure point at that, same failure issue, too tight a bend. And then Mustang Survival passed us. I mean, at that point, we were up there with all the lead boats, with the exception of Trickster, sailboats, with the exception of Trickster and Roderna.
So they were in the front of the pack.
Until we weren't.
We were
And
kind
then,
of in
and
the
then of course,
middle,
we
and
slid way back again. Right?
Oh my God.
So this is us going through Deception Pass, which was super fun. I mean, we were a little freaked out about it, to tell you the truth. I had slept a little bit until I heard them coming up. What are those little islands on the inside? This Discovery Islands, or what are those things? So I couldn't sleep anymore, so I woke up, and we didn't really know what was around the corner. And as we got closer, the wind started picking up a little bit, and I just had all these visions of just these big monster waves, and the current was supposed to be against us. And we did come around the corner, and we could see Team Mustang Survival up there, and it was hilarious. It was like I like to describe it as, if any of you have seen the movie Papillon, where this guy is escaping from the island and figured out he'd keep dropping these things of coconuts, these bags of coconuts, see if he's going to get swept out to sea. Team Mustang Survival would go out, chicken out, come back into the cove, and they go back out, and see, as they were doing that and we were coming up, the current was slowly coming down. And so they did that about 3 or 4 times, stick their nose out, come back, stick their nose out, and then they finally just zig, 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 and then finally made it out. And so by that time we had crept up on them a little bit, and we didn't really have any trouble getting through, but it was an extremely kind of mentally focused event. And when we were coming through the cliffs, I mean, we were coming up within 3 feet, 18 inches, and then bringing the boat around, because the first couple tacks we did up through there, you do what you think is right, and then all of a sudden one tack you take it a little closer, and you realize there's a lift, and in like the last boat length, right on the cliff, there's like this huge lift, So we would get in there, right a bow
Nice.
length against, and then we just bring it right up. Rah, and then bring
Straight
it
to
around.
barnacle.
Yeah, exactly. And wiggled our way right out of there. It was so much fun.
What was the current like?
I don't know. It was ripping pretty good. I mean, it wasn't.
Against it, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I want to think that it was like maybe, I don't know, 4.5, 4, something like that. I mean, it was pretty good. It was coming through pretty good.
And it was a foul current.
Yeah, it was against us. If it would have been any stronger, we would have had a hard time getting out of it.
It was gonna improve though, is that right?
Yeah, it was improving. Yeah, so we weren't. Yeah, I wasn't too worried about it. And then of course we figured that if we would get in trouble, we'd just get spit out the back. So as long as we weren't, there was just enough breeze that we knew that we'd get out of trouble if we blew a tack or something, as long as we weren't too close.
6 inches.
So
6 inches too good. That was the fun part, really. I'll remember that. It was
Look at the
so much
painters
fun.
on the bridge walking on the.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so there's Ruf Duck. They're focused. They're sailing well. Going to fast forward a little bit here because we'll come back, but hang on. Oh no, I didn't not put that in there. Oh, yep. Here's Narwhal going through. Now, this is north up. So we were coming from the left and going to the right, and that's us going through Deception Pass. Also focused, but maybe not quite the precision control. So what we learned is we're doing what?
You're doing backwards to Goat Island?
big
No,
loopy
no, no, no.
thing.
We're going. So
Does that go down?
west is on the right side.
Yes.
So yeah, Whidbey is on the top.
This is north. down
Wait,
again.
what? Oh yeah, north down. Yeah. So
So
or maybe it's
North
the and
Is
it's
it
got-
Deception Pass?
the
to
north
left?
is at the
left.
top. But
Deception
I-
passes to the left.
the point is, if your boat sails at 6 knots in like 8 knots of breeze, and you're in a 6 knot current, then your boat's sailing exactly as fast as the water's moving, and then your rudder stops working, and your boat spins around in circles, and you go, what?
Oh, you don't have any
We had no, we had no water moving over the ground, no relative motion, and so our boat was literally spinning in circles.
I think this might be a screenshot that I took, but this doesn't actually represent what happened because we came in the bottom left there to the right of the island that's at the bottom, which is Whidbey, is where we hung out for a couple hours.
Mhm.
And while we're hanging out, we couldn't really grab an anchor because it was like rocky and 100 feet deep to 5 feet of water.
We
like
were just
usually.
kind of dragging
Yeah, it
around.
wasn't working. So Bill decided to sail all night. So he like sailed in circles. I think that's what this captured. But if you look at the long to the
Oh,
left,
you're right.
the long down on the left side, and then the long across to the left is where we actually did the 360s under the
Oh,
bridge.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
But the tracker didn't catch it.
Yeah, because they were
And-
pretty tight 360s.
and-
We were really
and-
doing donuts.
Yeah, and we had thought like Ruf Duck that like, oh yeah, the tide will just carry you through, but in a multi-hull, the center of resistance is in the center hull and not the outer hulls that are kind of flying up in the tide. So as we crossed the walls, we were inches from the wall going backwards under the bridge.
Yeah, so you guys had a push.
Yes,
You were being pushed.
the
Yeah,
current
so
was
our-
going.
Yeah, we were fighting it.
Well,
and
we
you
had a
guys
push. We had a push in a bad way that I'm not going to. Bill is an amazing captain, but you steer backwards when you have that much of a push. So we were spinning around underneath the bridge.
And there was a
With this.
like a gooey duck boat trying to go like charging out behind us, and actually the guys on the old salts were behind us
Old
too, because we had
Salts,
sailed up
yeah.
there with them.
But I don't think
And-
it caught it on the tracker.
No, and you could tell the guys in the gooey duck boat, they were just like blasting their way through Deception Pass, and all of a sudden they basically stopped because we're literally spinning in circles. We did three circles in front of them.
360s underneath the
Wow.
bridge.
But you're
In
right,
a
that's
tide
me.
pool.
Yeah, we got there
Yeah.
at like
Yeah.
midnight. It was a really strong flood. We couldn't anchor. It was a couple 100 feet deep. We actually ended up anchoring like 20 feet from shore when I got tired, but I was like, well, let's just sail around. So the other two guys went to sleep and I just sailed around in circles for about 2 hours. And right in front of
I don't know,
Central.
out of the whatever 40 plus years of sailing I've had, there's been very few instances where I thought we're gonna lose the boat. That was one.
Wow.
See, I never thought we were going to lose the boat.
It was close.
I didn't lose the bowsprit.
So you went up Saratoga Passage to get to Goat Island, right? 'Cause wasn't that one of your doors? You had to go through Goat Island?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well,
and then,
Saratoga
yeah,
Passage, and then you went out the straits.
right, because, and then we do,
Central Pass.
right, we were discussing this because most of the boats went through the Swinomish.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we got to Goat Island at like, I don't know, 10 o'clock. That was actually really cool.
That was the
because-
best sailing.
Yeah, that was
ever.
pretty, because we were sort of like 50 feet, because we didn't know where the hell we were going. So we're 50 feet from, what's the landmass like that Anacortes is on? That's not Whidbey, right? That's, yeah, Glennis, I think, yeah. So we're sailing really close to that, and so there's no wind, so we were just pedaling and rowing. And then these guys in the old salts who were in like a Beneteau 40, and they had an oven and stuff. I see them just go trucking by like 300 yards offshore, and they're in the channel. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just follow them. So we start following them. And of course, as soon as we got away from the island, there was a lot of wind. But the problem was we're navigating on this little like 8-inch, Android tablet. And because we're just going up this channel, and I'm looking at their, stern lights. And so, and they're probably doing like 10 knots, and we're doing 14. So every time we got close enough that I could actually see the guy steering, like his silhouette, we, feathered the main to slow down, and then they would get a little bit far away, and then we would sheet in.
Because
then-
our navigation sucked.
It was
Like our
fine.
tablets sucked. We had no wind
It was
instruments. We
alright.
had like no depth.
Well, that's
like,
because the
it
wind
was
instrument got ripped off the mast.
Yeah. There was like a lot of stuff that we lost
Wait,
from
you
the get go.
started with wind instruments?
Yeah.
We did, yeah, we started with wind instruments. Well, and then, so we're going up this channel, and like every once in a while you'd see the little, like a red marker on the tablet. And I'm thinking like, how close are we? Is that coming up? And then you would see one of those giant cans just
Right next to us. We're doing like
It's like,
14.
well, we didn't hit that one.
The giant can right next to you. Like, oh my God, thank God we're following these guys.
Yeah, I know, because they knew where they were going.
We couldn't see anything. And I
That's fun.
swear
So
we
me-
could smell brownies that they were cooking in
Oh,
their
I
oven
know.
as we were going up.
So meanwhile, back way south at the Narrows, you can see there isn't too much wind. We had clawed our way. It was, I think, on the flood, so definitely significant current coming south right in our face. We had gotten to the tip of, I think this was Fox Island, and we needed to wait like 2 hours before the tide was going to turn. So we anchored. We tried to anchor, I should say. So some folks may remember about 2 years ago now, we picked up a very nice blue anodized aluminum fortress style racing anchor.
Hey, that was mine. Did it work?
Well, we dropped it here.
Oh, you lost it?
No. We tossed it in. We got as close to shore as we could. And we definitely, there was ground. We backed down as much as we could on pedal drive. And we were hanging out. There's a 24-foot trimaran that will remain nameless with 2 people on board. And we're yelling, and they're like, "Oh, are you guys anchored?" They were hove to. We said, "Yes, we're going to take a quick nap." And then we went below, we had been doing less than an hour a night at this point. So we were trying to get a little bit of sleep. And then I wake up about 40 minutes later, something doesn't feel right. We are floating backwards out, the current coming right through Tacoma Narrows is carrying us. The anchor is just dangling in who knows how many feet at that point. And of course, right about then, this F-24 that was also racing was just merrily, didn't want to honk a horn at us or anything like that. They were just merrily taking off and heading north towards the Narrows. But so we thankfully caught it just in time. We got the sails up, followed them. Actually, we're ahead of them for a little bit. But
Cursing.
we admittedly did look up the very nice anchor after the race, and pretty much the review was suggesting this is great if you need an anchor just to be race rules compliant, but don't plan on using it, right?
Thank you, Race.
So,
You were racing, man.
Yeah.
You work good in mud.
We're racing.
Oh, you can.
And
yes.
sand.
Two choice places. You can use.
Yeah. So I have a Fortress 11
Yeah.
pounder, and if it's in sand or mud, love it. Like I've been anchoring like 30 knots. It's what doesn't move.
Yeah.
And that's the anchor that we brought, so that every time we anchored, we were just kind of bumping and dragging around, and somebody would get up and, pull up the dagger board more, but yeah, they don't.
Is this team Lost Boys?
No.
No.
2 Ps in the tripod.
Oh, gotcha.
And then this was us going through the narrows. We actually went inside all the way on the west end of it. It was pretty tight, but we just had perfect wind and the current was still going against us. So this
Nice.
worked out great. The 2 Ps in the tripod were kind of cutting up the middle, and they were definitely struggling against the current. But yeah, no, that was a lot of fun.
It's a great shot.
Yeah.
And then
It's
we had
Wednesday
up,
at midnight.
yeah, so we had gone up the inside on the other side of Vashon is Calvos? Colvos, sorry. Colvos Passage, and not much wind. It was just enough. Let my go, try and get a little bit of sleep. And then we got up to the exit of that, between that and the lake, and it was just a washing machine. It was really rough. Yeah, it was decent wind actually, but with a lightweight 24-foot boat, we just weren't able to maintain anything. And it was pretty painful. About here is where we permanently broke our pedal drive. We have been having some issues with it, but it was once again a rotary drive shaft, and the end of it was pounded into a square that fit into the prop. And another one on the drive side. And we had effectively, it was just a whole bunch of small cables kind of pounded together. And we had been unraveling it. And at this point, it was not salvageable. But we managed to just get into the harbor at Blake Island. This was the middle of the dark. I hadn't mentioned, I had lost my glasses right before the start of the race.
no.
So I'm wearing sunglasses. And we're just going right through the pilings at the entrance to the harbor. Couldn't see a thing. With, I think at that point, one paddleboard paddle was about all we had. But we made it in, tied up to the loading dock, and got a little sleep. I'll end our story here. So we got up the next morning. We realized that the prop shaft was pretty much shot. And for us, we didn't want it to be going through Deception Pass with nothing but 1 or 2 sub paddles and nothing else. So we called the manufacturer. It's actually a really nice unit. The guy's in Canada, and he was willing to ship us out a new one. But of course, unfortunately, the border's still closed. This is one of those cases we would have been a lot better in Canada. We probably could have gotten something overnighted, but it was going to be a couple of days to ship it. So at that point, we decided that it was the safe and sane thing to do between the lack of human power and the lack of sleep. So we bailed out that morning. So we slept a little bit that night, but we ended up bailing out in the morning. And then didn't have a motor because we had dropped it off to save the weight. And then we spent pretty much all day, I think that was Thursday, all day, morning Thursday and into the afternoon, going upwind back to the point. But made it, and that was the end of our trip. So I will say, before I turn it over to the other guys for the rest of this, even though we didn't finish, it was an amazing experience. Really enjoyed it. I would highly encourage anyone to give it a shot.
So real quick question, was the reason why your pedal drive broke because you were running the shaft backwards against the winding?
So we were running it forwards, but we had a fair bit of curve in it. So the shaft versus the tube that it was in were a little different. So I think what was happening is it was getting friction, and then it was kind of pulling itself out and then allowing it to kind of like stripping a screw where you don't put enough pressure on it. I was pulling out enough to start to unwind it. That's the best we could tell. So, and admittedly, we were driving it really hard because this was supposed to be for a 50-pound kayak.
Yeah.
And here we are, probably 2,000-3,000 pound boat.
Yeah, and pedaling for the last 2 days.
Oh, far more than we expected.
Yeah.
We had put the pedal drive on as backup to the rowing stations, but between the lack of wind and taking off the rowing stations, we were going nonstop.
Amazing effort. Nice
Yeah,
work.
It was fun.
Good part.
Cool.
Sorry.
So
So-
how do you stop? You call somebody or? what
Yeah,
do you
we
do?
called up Race Boss and said, hey, we're gonna have to bow out. They were great about it, very helpful. They just turn off your tracker. They actually keep watching you, but they stop broadcasting your walk of shame or whatever. Back to your home port.
Wherever it is. Bill had to jump out for sick someone.
Before you hit the next
Yeah,
slide though.
go ahead.
So the reason why I want to bring this up the most is because our team totally underestimated the physical effort and the lack of sleep on this race. So we did pretty good the first day. Nobody needs to sleep. You do pretty good the next day because you're only a day out of sleep. We had a complete collapse in Bellingham pretty much, where we had a great run from Deception Pass up through the islands. Wind quit and we had to get back on the bikes again to pedal from the islands all the way into Bellingham Bay. We got in Bellingham Bay and it was just the end. People, were so tired, and we ended up almost everybody went to sleep. We had one person up on deck. We weren't even really sailing. We were just floating around. And that's us right there in Clovis Passage. I mean, we must have just stuck in Clovis Passage for
But that's
for hours and hours and hours. Or no, or yeah, sorry, Hale Passage.
Hale,
Sorry, yeah.
yeah.
So we were in Hale Passage, and we honestly were so tired. And finally, it wasn't until I think it was Hummels, Mike Hummels, in his normal way, he kind of gets up. He's got his cup of coffee. He looks around and says, "Time to get on the bike." And we're like, no. So we didn't actually get going again until he woke up and we actually started pedaling again. So we really underestimated, the sheer exhaustion part of this race.
Yeah, we underestimated the food for sure. The calories we're burning were just unbelievable. Like I think we rode from like Edmonds to the south tip of Vashon, around the outside. I mean, just like nonstop physical exertion. Like we were done. We were done. All the snacks were gone.
Yeah.
Like, instantly.
This
Every
day,
power bar that we had on board was gone. Like everything was gone.
so you didn't get to the point where you couldn't eat? I mean, it was hard to eat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, yeah, we were done for sure.
We were definitely just the lack of sleep, and we were not eating as much as we probably should have been.
Before this happened, we had one other sweet drop outside of Edmonds. There was a fan racer that came out on a 1930s sloop. They dropped us a 6-pack of beer and some sushi, which was pretty cool. He was like, "Oh yeah, we're watching you guys," and here we go. So Bill had to take off for a sick somebody. So I'm gonna try to advance this. We'll see how it works. We'll go that way. Yeah, so that's Narwal going into Deception Pass. I think we've seen that. That's before, I think, all hell broke loose, but that probably wasn't the scariest part, even though it was probably the closest we lost to losing the boat. That's us going through. Got Ruf Duck. Looks like you've already or about ready to round Point Roberts.
yeah, we did. We're headed back south, and that's when we finally started to recover a little bit. Most people had had some sleep by that point.
We had we came through Deception Pass, and there was a couple other people that caught up to us while waiting the tide to go outwards, outbound to catch that. And one was Old Salts, which they were a really great group of people, and then the other one was Canal Rats. And we kind of battled between those three. That became our own internal race with us. And when we came around this corner outside of Deception Pass, we still weren't doing that well. And then Dave jumped on the pedal drive, and then somehow we gained like a day on him, like out of that, just coming out of that. He just pedaled like crazy, and we're rowing like nuts. And that was before we lost our second forward drive.
Jeff, just a question. So you underestimated this. What do you do differently next time? I mean, would you just sort of say, this is your rest period, we're gonna only have 2 up and 2 down, and we're just gonna start from day 1? Or
We're still trying to figure that out. And honestly, I don't think we have it figured out. I've talked to different teams and everybody seems to have their own thing. But the thing that we're thinking about doing right now is we decided that after talking about things after the race, it's like at every certain portion of the race, you know, we had a pretty wide range of skills. So at one time or the other, really what we needed to be doing is the person with a skill that was needed needs to be awake and doing stuff. And the person who doesn't have that skill needs to be in bed.
Yeah.
And so, and we weren't really doing that. We were trying to stay on the shift schedule. And the shift schedule kind of worked for the first day, and after that it was gone. We couldn't keep the shift schedule going. As far as the physical exertion, I mean, if we would be 20 and in like top shape, that would have been awesome. But and you know, I don't really think we could have done much about that really. I mean, you push it as hard as you can, and that's what you do.
and then the other is, you know, with the race to Alaska, you can't take your engine.
No.
You could here, so, you know, I think lots of people chose to, just in case, but you're carrying gas and a heavy engine.
Yeah.
What do you think about doing that the second time around? You can still take your engine. I mean, if you were to-
For the Washington 360?
For the 360.
No, I'd take it off. Yeah. I mean,
But they're
I'd
not
take it
gonna
off.
do it again, are they?
I mean, I think that
What if they do it again?
Not this year.
there's situations when maybe you would want to use it, but I think if you're being smart about it and you don't get caught in conditions that are ridiculous, you don't really need it. No. As long as you have a pedal drive, you have oars,
Sure.
and
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Not
Yeah,
having
so-
it, you might choose to sort of hold for an hour before you made your move. Versus with it, you sort of thinking, well, maybe we can, maybe we can't.
Yeah.
Before we crash, we'll start the engine.
maybe
You know
you
what I
wouldn't
mean?
take the risk. I mean, there were some people that actually didn't have to start their motor in the race. Do you remember who that was?
There
Someone-
was 2 people that did it for some emergency situation where they weren't disqualified, and then it was a couple that got disqualified for it.
So I mean, I guess maybe you could run into a situation where you need it, but
I think the non-disqualified was if they responded to a Coast Guard rescue somewhere around the Common Narrows. And they were like, we're gonna go backwards with a motor to help these guys out, even though they're not in the race. I think that was approved as okay. Yeah.
Well, if you had your kid with you and you had to get your kid home, I was thinking, well, I've got
No, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not sure
No.
that was part of it.
No, we never really thought about using the motor. Even when after the race and we docked, we didn't use the motor. Yeah.
I mean,
We-
for safety purposes.
Yeah. I mean, it was okay. So I will admit that at the very beginning of the race, because we were planning this, I was glad that we had the motor. But after the race, I was like, yeah, we didn't really know. Yeah. So I'll fess up to that. Yeah.
So we debated on Team Narwhal to bring the motor or not. And then fortunately enough for us, the motor was stolen off of Bill's boat the week before. So we borrowed Vince's motor, I think, to get to Port Townsend and then handed it back and then had no engine with us. So we had no option.
Same here. We took ours off, although for our boat, 10 horsepower, 4-stroke, it's a significant measurable amount of mass, and we were too heavy anyway. So we actually really appreciate not having there. It's also would have been completely inappropriate for us all week. So
We went really, really, really light as much as we could remove from the boat as well. Like the head was removed, everything was removed out of the boat. Before, we just had like a 12-pack of diapers. We had to share those. Over the time. Water maker, things like this. I don't know what this video is, but I'll go ahead and play it. I'll try to make up some commentary if I actually see what happens here.
I see it's windy again.
Yeah, it's super windy.
That
Yeah,
was in slow motion, it was really action packed.
so
That was
that
a luffing jib, right?
that happened. That happened again. Okay. I'm maybe going the wrong way.
I like that jib.
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. This I think is Bellingham Bay for Team Narwhal after we blew out the spinnaker. We made it in there and we were free and clear and had no one around us. And there is a rounding point there that you need to make a mark for the race. And we were way over sail and we just had too much up. And we ended up doing like this crazy broach, ripping the oar off the boat and the whole oar drive. Unfortunately, off of the opposite side, and the oars are not ambidextrous, so the oars can be only run on one side. So we had the only oar left was on the same as the pedal drive, which meant we were only able to go in circles at this point under power, under human propulsion. We did blow out the spinnaker, which Dave made a great duct tape patch for. And this is the Holy Grail shot here. The Knights.
He's our Grail Knight. Yeah, we give Mike a hard time about that shot because he looks like the Grail Knight from.
Seek the Holy Grail.
No, yeah, exactly. At this point, you can tell that we're not really serious about racing anymore. We're not on the rail. We're not, we're just kicking back. Everybody's awake, and we're just goofing off. I mean,
what time of year is this?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking.
Yeah, this is
July.
June. Yeah, this is June. Yeah, it was cold. So this is, it's in the morning too. So it's been cold and yeah, so we're just hanging out. We are not serious racers at this point.
Diane asked me to earlier, like the question of, it seemed really negative, where the question was, Team Narwhal, are you trying to lose? So I'll explain that one to you, is that, there's a certain commentary and negativity and funness that comes with it of like, are you over the center line? Are you trying to lose? Are you disproportionately your weight the wrong side? Are you trying to lose? So it became sort of the boat joke of like, anytime you saw someone that was doing something that was kind of negative, but it was just super humorous. We had no opportunity to win at this point. So it became the ongoing joke of like, anytime anybody did something that was out of the ordinary, the question was, are you trying to lose?
Nice duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape spinnaker. It worked well. There's a team that's Bill on the right, me on the left, and Dave in the center. Dave is an avid surfer from Southern California. Hasn't had much sailing experience, but I'll tell you what, that guy would just say, you tell him to dig a hold of China, he'd show up in the morning and help you do it. Awesome. All right, Jeff, tell me about this.
Yeah, this is the point in the race where we had our third breakdown. And so current flow is down. We are just to the north and slightly to the west of Smith Island and Minor Island. And so if anybody knows that, those two islands, they're connected by this spit that's usually like about 6 inches below the water. And the current just pours in through there like a funnel. And so our big magic plan was we were going to go out into the flood. Yeah, so we're going to go up, do this big nice arc around Smith Island, get into the current that's coming in. So it's a flood, yeah. So it's still ebbing out as we're coming through the islands, and it's turning. Just like
where's Brodurna?
Brodurna, everybody is stacked up at this point.
Right where it says high sea drifters.
Yeah,
that's where everyone's
like what's
stacked
inside
up.
of the finish.
Brodurna was about ready to get sucked back out.
Yeah, so this Brodurna go way.
Brodurna had done it. Yeah, Brodurna had come way on out towards Victoria, basically.
Right, Arrow Strait.
Yeah,
They went Arrow Strait.
they went Arrow Strait, and everybody else, most of the people came through. So anyway, so we're sailing along there, and then the wind gets super light, and this is the other thing about multi-hull versus monohulls, and I get sucked into this every single time. So so we're sitting there going nowhere, wind's getting light, And then all of a sudden there's like the Melges 24 comes up behind us and passes us, and the little other multi-hulls like kind of creeping up on us. No, Trickster's already passed. They're like by the finish line at this point. And so I made the decision that no, those guys are passing us. We're going to harden up and we're going to go on the east side of Smith on Minor Island. And that was a bad decision because we turned and the current's still getting stronger and no wind. So wind went to 0. Jonah and I got on the pedal drive. We made about 4 rotations and the pedal drive totally, fell apart. And so there we are in between Minor and Smith, getting sucked into and over that little spit. And this is the point too, where so everybody's on deck, 2 people are asleep, and two people are awake. We need help, so we wake them up. And this is where you really realize how tired people are, because we're in a situation where the chart plotter is saying one thing, you're looking at the heading of the boat, it's saying one thing, and then you're looking at us being sucked in between the into the bar there. And one crew member is like, you wake him up, he's like, and I say, I hand the helm to him, I say, go this way. And of course that makes no sense, because why would he go that way? Because we want to go this way. I said, we're going this way in between. And it's like, so it just takes so long cognitively to when you're that tired for that stuff to sink in, right?
It's impossible.
Yeah, so there we eventually kind of jury-rigged a paddle, and you'll see that in a minute. But we finally did creep up around Minor, and then after that it was all good because the current, even if we did nothing, the current would take us up.
You went over the spit.
We did not, but man, it was so close. I mean, we spent probably, I don't know, maybe it was an hour trying to get up around Minor.
I was watching you on the track. I was like, what? Where are they?
We were there for so long that what's his name? The multi-hull guy, Russell Brown. We're there. We're like paddling. We were using our hiking sticks, and Russell Brown, he's coming out. He's coming all the way from Port Townsend. He comes up. Hey, how you guys doing? What's up? And then they were like, oh, we're just hanging out watching the sea life. We've been here for an hour. And it's like,
32.
Yeah, he was there in that Goujon 32.
Yeah.
And which is effortless. And it's by himself. It's like, and he says, you want anything? I'm like, a paddle? he's like, oh, don't got one. So yeah. So anyway, so we had fashioned this, and again, that was Jonah. Jonah, he really sprang to action a lot.
Nice.
And Mike Brown. This is a Jonah and Mike Brown special. Mike Brown is a veterinarian, and most of the tape on there is veterinary tape. We had everything to fix horses and nothing really to fix people, but it kind of works. Yeah.
What was the blade made of?
That was a hatch board, a bin board. Yeah, from the inside of the boat. Yeah, wasn't very big. Yeah.
So this is pretty similar here. I don't know if you have anything to add to that one. This is where we were being, I don't know if we were coming down or up at this point. I think we're probably coming down based on where you're at, Jeff. That we were coming back down from Point Roberts, and this is where we were kind of approached and followed down the border from the Canadian Coast Guard, which was kind of cool. And then we made a weird call to go down between San Juan Island and Orcas, opposing to the other stuff. And our thought behind that was, there was one group that were really trying to race, and they, it's like any race like this, there's first place, second place, and no one else, right? So you end up like battling with your internal competitors at this point. And one was the Old Salts, the other one was the Canal Rats. And so we just wanted to beat those two guys because we've been battling with them the whole time. There's like the front pack, the mid pack, and then the backpack, and the people that had not made it as far as they wanted to, and had maybe even thrown in the towel at that point. So we felt like we were pretty good on the mid pack, and the mid pack for us was, the unfortunate people didn't catch all the tides. That's really what it came down to. We didn't have enough power. We didn't have enough human power to make it through any of the stuff that Jeff did originally, which wore out the crew. We were worn out just from sailing and trying to do as much as we possibly could. And we anchored 3 times. So coming down through here, we made the call to go a little bit of a different direction than most people did. And that's this inside passage. There's it never pays off to not follow the leader.
No, and going through that, I mean, we've been stuck in here.
No, we actually, I think we did pretty well through there.
I think we
Yeah.
had a pretty solid following current like the whole afternoon.
We had a really good following current all the way through. And then we anchored for about 3 hours in the most raccoon infested waters I've ever seen. And then
In the water.
They were-
It's in the water.
it was crazy the noises they were making from shore. And we're in like, it was like 150 feet of water and like 10 feet of water, 5 feet from shore. So like basically rubbing rocks on this side as the anchor would roll around, and just we're slamming around in the rocks. It was pretty good. But there you are, you're coming off of Smith Island at that point.
Anything happened by Point Roberts?
There wasn't much for us that happened at Point Roberts. Like it was pretty good. We had a really great sail once we left Bellingham Bay. Came up through, I don't know, inside that passage.
Hale Passage.
Hale Passage. We got interviewed by the race community at that point. We were in some fancy fisheries boat. And then we had a pretty just awesome sail up there, and then coming back, and then by the time we hit Susha, it just shut off. And basically we rode from Susha to Friday Harbor at night. And then by the time the current got so heavy by Friday Harbor, we're like, we got to duck in somewhere, we're going backwards. So it was all hands on deck, pedals, 1 rowing station is all we had left. And somebody just like trying to go as close to shore as we possibly could, looking at the iPad to try to get the eddy to suck us in enough to get to a point where, because it's really a big drop off at that point at the inside of San Juan Island there. So it's like 250 feet of water, like 10 feet from shore. Very good to see you guys.
I think at this point, so we made it around Smith now, and there's absolutely no breeze. We're just kind of going in the current.
Oops.
And so for us, this last little bit was our moonshot kind of. So basically, all the decisions that we made right as soon as we went around minor. And we couldn't really steer. We paddled a little bit, but we weren't really making much headway. The current was moving us, and we, from there to the end, the whole strategy really was just trying to, make sure that we held the course that we kind of planned on, and keep the boat in the current, and then just hope that there was eventually going to be some wind. And there wasn't. And we got off Partridge Point, which is just below where we are here. We got caught in a big rip, just fortunately. I mean, tide's coming in now. Yeah. Which is good for us. Except we have no power. Yeah. And at this point, I'm worried about getting swept to Seattle, basically. So because we're not on the right side to get to Port Townsend. And the current focus is right off the Partridge Point. We just got in this weird, bizarre, like maybe 5 boat length wide rip that was going at a pretty good clip. And it was just enough that we got a little bit of apparent wind, and we were doing those 360s you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
So a little bit of apparent wind, 363s, got the chute up, didn't catch it, had to wait around for the next revolution, get it up, try and catch it again. So we did that twice. Was it twice?
Interesting.
And finally just managed to catch it, got out of the rip, and from there straight across the Port Townsend, it was like, 90 degrees this way and 90, this way, and just watching the tracker or the track on the GPS. Because we were never going the way we were pointed ever, and just making sure that
Were you jiving there?
making sure that line, no, it's
Just
mostly
going
hardening.
sideways.
Yeah, it was mostly really hardening up.
And were you
falling off.
sailing on the apparent wind with the spinnaker?
It was a mix of apparent and little teeny gusts,
And
little
current.
breaths of wind. Yeah, yeah. And the key was really just keeping that line, that track line, right on Port Townsend, and just doing whatever it took to keep it on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it's Big Badrina, they got sucked out.
I think I took almost halfway to Dungeness.
Yeah.
Did they? Yeah,
The
they-
race boss was like.
That was earlier.
They're in a position.
Before
to
the
win.
current.
Tide was going out.
Yeah, they hit that earlier than us. Yeah.
But they're in a position to win.
You can see it when they finish, they're pretty pissed.
So this-
When you're trying to go in that line, what are you utilizing, even though the boat's not hitting where you're going?
We, on the GPS, we just programmed in Port Townsend as a mark. And then it always keeps a red line, line on the GPS that's pointing right to that mark.
Right.
And it basically is your track. In other words, if you start to go downwind too much, that will, that line.
So you had wind or something that gets you back, how are you getting?
We basically just, if the line was going left, we steered the boat right.
So you
Oh, yeah.
had to-
But you're not
And
pointing
we had
towards
so
us.
little wind. Yeah.
steers.
Yeah, the key was keeping that red line in our track in the direction that we were making, the direction made good or whatever. Making that pointed straight Port Townsend, not worrying about that we were 90 degrees to what that was saying. Yeah.
So I think this is the anchor point right here, just north of Friday Harbor, where Free Narwhal was anchored in their raccoon corral. But we were so close to shore, like I've never, for one, this is the third time we've anchored with a full main up.
And I might say you're not that far back.
No, we weren't that far back. We weren't that far back off of, not catching a lot of tides and only having
Yeah.
3 dudes. But I woke up and this is the only sleep that I had on this entire trip was at that anchorage. That was the first time where I actually had like 2 or 3 hours solid sleep. And I woke up to the bottom scraping the ground as the tide changed. Like, Bill, tide changed, let's go. Boom, anchors up, and we went. It was unbelievable. I have no idea what this is. Anyone?
That's Protection
17.3
Island.
knots.
Is that Verdurna getting sucked out?
No, that must be us. Like
Is there a keep out zone after this race?
okay,
Uh,
yeah.
Somebody's making 17.5 knots, so that's not.
No, that was us. That was us. So once we came down across the straits and hit Point Wilson, like it picked way up. Like it got gnarly. It got super gnarly. So we're doing 17.3 at this point.
So what time under jib and main?
We had a lot of sail changes going across the strait, but yeah, this is jib and main probably.
And it was a southerly then. That was when it went from Tom and switched to a southerly.
It was a southerly, yeah.
Yeah.
So we were
So you're
beating
reaching
against it, and then now we're getting ready to reach across it from Cape George there to Point Wilson and head back in. But for me, for me, it was like I thought I was scared shitless like a couple times in this race already with this boat, but this was almost the scariest point because all of a sudden we're really close to the finish line, and all of a sudden we're going 17 knots. We're going so fast. But the crew at that point was so dialed in. That was like, this was the money as we were coming across the finish line. We felt like we had never been more dialed in as a crew.
Can you back up once? Were you told to stay out of the shipping lanes there where they all converge? There's a big circle. Was that
they did
out
that.
of bounds?
They did that in the race to Alaska when you headed up the R2 AK 2016 that I did. They told you that you could not go into the vortex there, the Bermuda Triangle of shipping lanes, but they did not tell us that coming back for this race.
They were pretty hardcore about making you call in. So anytime you crossed a traffic lane, you're supposed to call in and let them know. Did you guys have to do that too?
We did quite a bit of, especially that first day when we were going a little bit into the wind. It was just
Call it
nonstop.
in.
Calling
Yeah,
in every
Phone
30
call to
minutes.
The race boss.
You had to call into Vessel Traffic Services.
So you're crossing
So
the
tell them
town.
you're crossing, yeah. And Frank, this last day, I had to I had to call in. It was like I was thinking, this is almost the most pointless call I've ever made because I have no control over where I'm going. It's like I knew we wanted to go across, so I called in and told them I was going to cross. But here you are in a boat, you're not going to, no motor essentially. And so whether or not you're really going to make it across before another vessel comes through or not.
You guys are talking about the motor, I have a little 3.5 horse, 2-stroke. It's only 27 pounds. And, a couple gallons, and it's not a lot of weight just for the safety aspect.
I had talked to Daniel Evans, the race boss, before the race, kind of just side to side, and said, really, if we're crossing the shipping lanes, you want us to call in every single time. And he goes, well, you guys are like, if you're underway and making way as a multi-hull and you're well lit, probably not a big deal. But if you're sitting there in the shipping lanes, not making way, underway, you should probably call it in. Or if you're a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard, you should probably call it in. So we never actually called in with them in any situation. I definitely didn't call it in to them saying we're in the middle of the shipping lanes doing 17 knots. I did call it in the race to Alaska when I was there doing -3 knots backwards towards Smith Island from Victoria, and got a hold of VTS because I couldn't get the ship that was coming down on us to even respond whatsoever. And eventually they said, yeah, this is the tanker ship Los Angeles. And I gave them my latitude, longitude, and they came back to me and said, yeah, we don't see you at all. And then I said, oh yeah, we see you. We're on a collision course. We're going to veer 14 degrees to starboard, and missed us, which was great because we were going backwards in a 1967 Sea Runner Trimaran. And that was beneficial, but I think under this situation, no, we didn't call it in.
That was a big wind. Was that?
That was a huge wind. Yeah, that was a big gale we hit.
Making no way of getting going.
Yeah. I have no idea what this is.
Looks like the finish line.
Looks like the finish line.
Now, see, this slide though is actually should have been in front of the one you just showed, because when we came across, that southerly hadn't filled in. We still had no wind. This is the first wind that we saw. That little strip.
So
right
you had
there.
no wind on the finish line?
No, well, just right there. So we had that, and that took us right in, and we managed to fly the spinnaker from there into the finish line.
Just going
So-
across the.
Just for some reason, by Point Wilson there, between Port Townsend and Point Wilson, there seems to be always this little
Yeah,
strip of breeze. And this was taken by Sean. Sean was like the Washington 360 mega fan / something. He was everywhere at the course. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, it was slush on. He was in the fisheries
It was-
boat.
Yeah, those two.
We experienced the squall as well, at least the end of it.
Sean and Jessica, they were everywhere.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the other Shredder
Yeah.
Beaver drop.
Yeah.
We had a
were
couple other
big
drops.
time, Tracker jockeys.
They were.
So you guys got to ring the
And
bell.
that's us. Yeah, we got to ring the bell. Dun, dun, dun.
I don't know what the next slide is. Maybe Narwhal here.
Probably 17 knots with that angle.
Yeah.
Is that on the way?
Smiles. Smiles, everyone, smiles. I'm Mr. Rourke, your host. Welcome to Fantasy Island.
Thanks.
Comes up. Or,
I think that's the end.
That might be the end.
Yeah, there were a couple
Yeah,
blank
that
slides.
would have
There was a couple more.
Oh, no, that's
Oh.
the end.
That might be the end.
right?
Yeah, so the end of our journey, we crossed the finish line without any motor on board. We weren't able to actually go in because it was blowing like snot when we actually crossed. It was blowing probably 17 to 25. And we decided,
Crossed the line and then it just took off.
and we decided like, well, there's no way to go in and ring the bell, and their air horn was actually out of air. You could see them out there shaking it, which is really disappointing. And we had no booze, we had no nothing on board, and we're just like, we couldn't really celebrate, so it was kind of a high five. He's like, well, let's just head back to Seattle. So we ended up sailing all the way back to Seattle without an engine, which we made really good time for Port Townsend, Seattle, and got
3 days last time. Made it in 6 hours.
right.
Yeah.
So we made it in a few hours. I would say it was a pretty fast trip because it was blowing pretty good. And as I was cleaning the galley and cleaning everything up on the entire boat and getting everything kind of put away and everything packed up and everything organized, I found a 22-ounce bottle of beer from the Multihull party that I thought was an empty that we didn't throw overboard. And I'm like, that's a full beer. And we were able to split that right before we came into port, but it was like close enough to taste home anyway. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that big of a significance.
How'd you get the boat into Shellsville?
It's funny because I don't want to diss on Bill and I's docking jobs, but we did a really shitty job of docking his boat.
Well, good thing is you didn't get no shits about a little dinger.
No dings matter. But we had smashed that boat in the dock 1,000,000 times under power with the outboard. And then when we sailed into the dock, it was our most perfect landing that we've ever had.
You were focused. Because you only had a third of a beer.
We just coasted right in and lifted the thing out. We're like, okay, we're done.
Like a boss.
Back in the slip.
Thanks, you guys.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I think we need
We
to
did a
turn
really
on
Still
the.
people, oh, Mark's asleep.
There's a lot of people still on. I don't know how to turn on the volume because I don't know if we can hear them.
Well, they can unmute themselves when they want to
Yeah.
say something. Yeah, thanks.
Hey,
I don't
Mark
know if
Dix,
we can
can
hear
you
you.
say something? Because your mic is off. Can you say something? I mean,
Sure.
Video's frozen.
Oh, we
I'm
can hear you.
speaking right now.
All right,
Great.
we can hear
We're
you.
just making sure we can hear somebody. Thank you.
Yeah, I can unmute myself. I assume everybody else can.
I think we did a pretty good job. No question.
Anybody got any bad questions? If not, all right.
Well, so who actually won? Who
Dave.
was the winner?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody.
All of
Everybody
us.
was finished.
No, the winner was a monohull. It was what, a 28.
With some guys from Montana that had done the race to Alaska before, right?
An Olsen 30, yeah.
Yeah,
They were. It was an Olsen 30. Yeah, and they won it. That is interesting to me because if you look at the people who finished, there were actually several multihull or monohull in that. This group does some really strange things. Like some small boats finished pretty quick. Some bigger boats, faster boats finished slower. There were some teams out there that were like just stacked with gills of talent that didn't do very well. And matter of fact, I was talking to one of them, and he was a little salty because they didn't done very well at all. And I said, well, so the first thing that the first mistake that we made is that it was not really a sailing race. So they had all these guys in their boat, they were great sailors, but they weren't doing all the other things that they had to do to be successful in this race. You have to put a good drive together. You have to be able to work while your food deprived. You got like all these.
You got to stick to shifts and protocols. Like that was the whole thing. Like
whatever works for you, really.
It would have been like a totally different race. So, we had a couple extra people in but you just don't know that going into it. We were trying to stay light and do a race boat with sailing, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
There wasn't sailing to be done.
Surprising it. All that.
Yeah, those guys were relentless though. The Team Pressure and Team Dark Horse, we were with them quite a bit. Be there, driving the break, and we fall back. We passed them, they passed us. But they were absolutely relentless. I mean, I don't know what they were doing, whether they weren't sleeping or not. They never really stopped. They never really gave up. They were sailing slow just because of conditions many times, but I don't think they ever really dropped off their like optimal, we're racing kind of. They were so annoying. We called, the only other yellow boat there was them. We called them the yellow boat.
But people remember the winners and not the ones that dropped out. And there was a catamaran. There was a pedal drive only catamaran called Boogie Barge. Boogie Barge. 3/4 of the race, like they were in Bellingham and they were like 1,000 hours in front of everybody else.
Yeah, he worked for it. In the middle of the race to go to work for it.
He quit to go to work for a day, and then also like I guess something happened with the pedal drive and they had to throw in the towel. When I ran into those guys a few weeks before on Blake Island, I was just out there cruising, and like they were all like aerospace engineers. They were, like, developing like the whole shape and had done the lightweighting and weird pedal drive stuff with like 27 gears and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, I mean, it was just the winners. There was a lot of people in there that didn't finish that were pretty innovative on this race.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
When you finally passed the Bend racers, could you actually see them and what did they look like at that point? I mean, were they like The Walking Dead or?
I think they were on an island.
I never saw them.
They were professionals at this, and
If you can speak up in the room, it's really hard to hear.
It was. I would say that it was hard to see the kayakers and the paddleboard, all these people. I mean, they were usually. I don't really recall seeing any of them out in the middle. I think the only one that I do remember seeing is down by Olympia. It was a rowing team, it was a single skip, single rowing skip. They were usually either too far out ahead or.
We did see we ran into the guy at Eagle Island. Off of the little one. And he's like in a little tiny little pod that looked like an egg.
Oh, really?
And he was in this pedal drive little pod, and that guy was on top of the world when we ran into him. It was like day 2, and then I never saw him again. But it was really hard to see those people because they really hung at the shore.
I don't know. The first day we did 2 pictures all the way down until back home. But I never got to talk to them. I would like to. They were sailing really well. The whole way down from Point No Point to Seattle, we were behind them, and everybody was kind of working the day, and that's really helping the west side a little bit. We got moving out in front of them. 29. Or no, 28.
28. Yeah, 28. So they were coming up. They were coming up by Tacoma Narrows when they were going down.
And they were literally like 2 feet off the beach rowing against the tide. And it was 4 of them, 4 huge people just rowing
Oh, okay.
on all 4 corners against the tide in the eddy. Like I think an oar would hit the beach. And it's just like that was the tactic. They just like they're like, we're gonna human power through this. It's gonna be, you know, there's gonna be no wind. We're gonna human power through it. And they had a crew, I think that's 6. And that really got them over the top on this race was that they were able to human power nonstop and have people like.
They're like a group.
It was just on that. I think they had 4 in plan. The 6th was, I think they added based on the very last. It was a good strategy. I mean, if we had 6, if we would have been able to paddle up Provost, kept up with Jeff, potentially kept up in a few other spots where
you would get more rest.
we just couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it. 3 of us were. Yeah.
We talked about it afterwards, and we did a demonstration with Paul. And some paddles, which is another thing. Next time we do this, we're going to have both.
But if it's windy, you want to do it, you know, so you got to make a call at the last second and say, like, I'm sorry. Off work. You're screwed.
I'm not, I'm, you know, I've been thinking about that. And unless there's a little bit of this long, I mean, a day rate, 2 days will be good. We could have about 3, 4 days. We really
It's for people. Nonstop.
We didn't see it before. Maybe without all the people.
Without the pedaling. I mean, for a sail,
It's hard to hear you guys online, so if you could project more, that would really help us.
We're trying to figure out the ideal crew number, and what we're discussing is, you know, do you benefit from having more crew versus fewer crew? Fewer crew is lighter, faster. More crew, you have more power and more ability to split your shifts up and get more reps. And I think that is kind of the interesting thing about this race. And again, it's not really a sailboat race. It's an adventure race, and so there's a lot more to it than just saying, yeah, I'm gonna do this with 2 people. I'm gonna strip the boat, and then we're gonna actually really be fast. I mean, those monohulls that won, you know, the monohull that won and the monohulls that were up in the top, I mean, really weren't in the top because, you know, they were necessarily really super sailors. They're great sailors, but they also had a lot of other stuff figured out. Some of them had big, yeah, and the majority of the monohulls had larger crews. It's true too.
We're out there. We started 3 people. Correct. First
Sorry, we can't hear you.
sorry, we were overloaded with 3 people plus all the gear plus the rowing stations on that first day, and we were really feeling that we couldn't point properly. So now, of course, once we lost our 1 crew member and the rowing stations, we were a little bit on our plate. You couldn't do anything. Yeah, right though. Or take 6. This race goes on.
And he was rested. Yeah, that's right. Well, and, I mean, and take a look at even this presentation, you know, it's like we finished, but Bill really wasn't that far behind us, and he actually anchored like 3 times. So, I mean, it's Yeah, interesting, because everybody in the sport sees different conditions, sometimes it's fast, sometimes not. And, you know, sometimes it equalizes everybody. But it's a crazy, interesting race.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's an advantage.
Big people on it. A lot of people.
In 2019 March Lake, they did one group that I had and I think if they actually actually stand out, if it was a high wind year, it was good, but it pitch the cycle. I just go off and I take off with just the sailor thing. Because it is that balance.
It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
lots of people, the wind, you need them, but you don't want to play with this great sailor. It is weak.
Yeah,
You
get
can
rid of
pitch
the
through, but you
rules
can't
limit.
add more.
That's right. They let you pitch through, but pick them up. Yeah, exactly.
I see.
Fair enough. No,
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation.
Yes, thank you for sticking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. It's good to see everybody. Take
Right.
care.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks for those awesome oars, Mark Dix, and the rowing stations for Narwhal. That was awesome.
You bet. Glad they worked, and the shaft on that broken one can be repaired.
Yeah, well, at least we saved the big sweep on the outside, so we can do it again.
Yeah.
Are you interested in doing the stage one?
Maybe. I'm also thinking about maybe paddling the 7048.
Oh, nice.
Kayak. So, lots of choices.
Or we could throw the kayak on deck and then you could just paddle home afterwards.
Yeah, I could do them both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Yeah, I'm pretty excited if we do the stage one this year. I would also be interested in maybe jumping on the whole thing with somebody if someone was kind of interested in a mid-pack scenario, nothing front pack style.
Yeah, I think it's fun to do, any one of these races. The Washington 360 looked like it'd be fun, but they're not going to have that next year. The 7048 looks fun. Doing stage one can be fun. Going all the way to Alaska, it involves a lot more logistically and everything to get back from up there.
Yep.
But it's all fun stuff.
Hi, everybody.
Ciao.
Hey,
So we might get a better microphone. Plan.
I might have it.
Does it have a mute button on it?
It does, yeah. It's a big round, tall hockey. Has a really good microphone and a good speaker on it. And it's got a mute in the center.
Well, that's just what we need.
I know, but I don't.